John Tory, you get the first crack at the last question, and here we go. Whether the city issues a permit for a film shoot or sidewalk renovation, the outcome is the same, the creation of a temporary barrier in the pedestrian traffic flow. What would you do to better coordinate such interferences and more effectively ensure that the city's public spaces and sidewalks are fully accessible?
Well, let's remember, Steve, when it comes to some of these kinds of things, it's the same bunch that are doing these things. And look, the film industry, when you mention that, is a great thing. It brings a lot of jobs to the city for a lot of people. But it's the same bunch that are issuing the permits that are shutting down the Gardiner and the Lakeshore at the same time. And so the answer rests in part in just having better management down there, better coordination between the different departments, and making sure, for example, that these kinds of things which seem maybe simple or something we don't even think about, like when you're changing around a sidewalk or closing off a sidewalk for a film shoot, are that we take into account through using, for example, the Disability Issues Committee to figure out what the impact is on people. So I think it starts just with better management, more considerate management, making sure that we ask the Disability Issues Committee to liaise with these city departments to make sure that the concerns of disabled people are taken into account, because it's a safety matter as well as a matter of just basic consideration.
Olivia Chow.
Well, people shouldn't have to get to mid-block to discover that a sidewalk is closed, and it's a common sense things that we can do. And again, this is a no-brainer because it affects mothers with small kids, it affects seniors, and it's a good example why the Disability Issues Committee need to be consulted more. And I think that offices like the Toronto Film and Television Office needs to work with experts like you and the committee members so that there are best practices and that they are used. One of my campaign platform talks about pedestrian safety. It talks about the importance of putting pedestrian first and to make sure that the corners and all the intersections are safe. Those details are very, very important, especially people that have disabilities.
David Soknacki.
Thank you. It's more than just the film industry, of course. It's also permitted and non-permitted uses. It goes all the way from A-frame signs to real estate signs to restaurant signs. It goes all the way to breaks in the sidewalk and all these obstructions. A number of things that we can do. First of all, when it comes up to signs, there are enforcement sweeps. We have our bylaw enforcement groups, and they can do sweeps, and they can actually highlight trouble spots. I've mentioned open data as a way to figure out exactly where those problems occur, and if they reoccur, we need to jump on it. I want to talk also about access audits. You know, we can audit companies, we can audit groups, whether or not they have a sensibility to accessibility issues and whether there are enforcement issues on their file. And finally, we can put in checklists on permits. And so we can make people informed when they put out their permits or put on the real estate that certain things are allowed and not allowed.
Karen Stintz, last word on this.
Thank you. This is the exact kind of issue that highlights for me why we need a transportation czar. And I've talked about a transportation czar because that transportation czar will make sure that all modes of transport are working and accessible. Because right now we have a siloed approach. The TTC makes their decision, the film department makes their decision, the planning department makes their decision about how to issue a permit and when, and then the transportation department makes a decision about roads. What we need to do is bring it all together so that there's one agency looking at the whole, to make sure that we don't rip up the sidewalks on all the north-south streets, to make sure that we have ways for pedestrians to walk, to make sure that our roads are working for not just pedestrians, but for cyclists and for cars and for streetcars and for buses. So with one agency responsible for getting our city moving, we will make sure that these kinds of things don't happen again.
Thank you, Karen Stintz.